Paul Linke was born in New York, New York, the son of Richard O. Linke, a personal manager, producer, and partner of Andy Griffith. After roles in films such as The Baby Maker, Big Bad Mama, The Strongest Man in the World, and Moving Violation, Paul Linke appeared in the cult classic 1977 movie Grand Theft Auto, which was Ron Howard's directorial debut. During the time frame of his character on the television series Chips, Linke played a similar role as Sheriff Bruce Smith in the cult classic slasher film parody Motel Hell. He also appeared in another Ron Howard-directed movie, the film Parenthood. His other film credits have included roles in Space Rage, Shrunken Heads, and K-PAX. His career has included appearances on many well-known television series, such as The Waltons, Laverne Shirley, Happy Days, MASH, Knots Landing, Saint Elsewhere, Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, Murder, She Wrote, Baywatch, and a recurring role in Judging Amy. He appeared in a 1985 episode of Three's a Crowd, a short-lived television sitcom spin-off of Three's Company, starring John Ritter. 3 years later, Linke would work with Ritter again when he joined the cast of Hooperman, the ABC dramedy series that Ritter subsequently headlined. In 2000, Linke co-wrote and directed the acclaimed stage play Save It for the Stage, The Life of Riley, with actor Charles Nelson Riley. Linke met his first wife, Francesca Chex Draper, a musician and composer, at a party in Los Angeles in 1976. They married in 1978 and had 3 children together, Jasper, Ryan, and Rose. When his wife died of cancer in 1986, Linke channeled his grief into writing and performing a play called Time Flies When You're Alive. First presented as a one-man show in Los Angeles and HBO drama, the work was then developed into the book Time Flies When You're Alive, a real-life love story. The very emotional work has garnered critical acclaim. Linke later married Christine Healy in 1991. They have a child together, a daughter named Lily. Currently, Linke is working on a short film, War Dog, in which he plays the driver of Kayla, a young soldier. Linke has also completed work on the film The Guest House. When a single dad rents the guest house of a wealthy bachelor, he soon discovers that his new landlord's generosity does not come without a price. Linke plays a detective, and the film is due for release in the near future. Of course, Leapers will know Paul Linke best for his dual roles in Quantum Leap. Lionel in Play It Again Seymour, and Sheriff Ben Masters in the Halloween episode. Now please enjoy Albie's conversation with Paul Linke.
Welcome to the Quantum Leap podcast, Mr. Linke. It's an honor to have you with us.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm kind of excited because there's a few episodes that I like, and you're in 2 of them. Play It Again Seymour, of course, and the episode that not a lot of Quantum Leap fans like to mention the name of. They think it's haunted.
Really? I never knew that.
Oh, yeah. It's a big online fan community urban legend that if you mention the name, bad things will happen.
Sort of like the way actors feel about saying the title to the Scottish play.
Exactly. Same type of thing.
Good. I learned something. I never knew that, and I'm glad to be a part of that.
Yeah, it's kind of spooky. But can we talk about Play It Again Seymour first, since that came first in your shoot?
Of course.
Tell me how you became involved with Quantum Leap and how was your experience on that first episode?
You know, it was interesting because Play It Again Seymour, was that season 2?
The end of season 1.
Okay, I wondered about that because I'll tell you a story about that, which I personally think is interesting, which is, besides the fact that the young man in it went on to have such a great career, and of course his name is eluding me right now. Willie Garson. Yeah, he went on to do a lot of great stuff. But anyway, there was a night where, and I worked for many years in the business, this was the only time I can ever recall this happening, where they were jamming so hard to get the episode finished, and it was so complicated. And we were at the old Ambassador Hotel, the Coconut Grove, which happened to be where my high school prom was, which was kind of strange. But anyway, we were shooting, and the crew worked for more than 24 hours straight. I mean, you know, when you think about it, it was ungodly, the hours that they had to put in to get that show. And I also remember that we filmed downtown in a wonderful old Art Deco kind of building where they had that great elevator and stuff.
Yeah.
And my getting involved with it was simply I went and auditioned for it, and thank God Don Belisario liked me. And he gave me the role, and it was fantastic because Scott Bakula happens to be one of the truly great people that I've met in the business. And to this day, when I see him at parties or whatever, he's just the nicest man, as was Dean Stockwell. I mean, they were just a great duo, and I had played against Seymour in the first year, so they didn't know what was going to really be happening with the show, but I really enjoyed working with those guys.
What was it like playing the bad guy in the episode?
I like playing serial killers and bad people. It was always fun because I was mostly known for being the comic relief on Chips, or in films, I was usually the overweight cop who made you laugh. But it was fun to get different stuff.
Cool. Having the part in the first Quantum Leap episode, did that help or hurt you get cast in the next Quantum Leap episode that you were in?
I got to think it helped because Don Bellisario liked me, and by then he realized that my father was Richard O. Linke, and they were old buddies.
Oh, cool.
And because I'd come through with the first performance, I still auditioned, as I recall, for the second job, but got it. That was really fun to get to do more than one episode of the show that I like that, because I can't tell you the amount of episodes or shows that an actor goes in on through his career and never gets cast, like 10 times to L.A. Law or whatever, or 8 times to Matlock, to actually get to come back. And because then you come back, everybody, the crew, and they're happy to see you. And I think Joe Napolitano directed The Boogeyman, as I recall, during my research, and he knew me from Chips. He had been around Chips. I can't remember in what capacity, but that's where I first met him. So it was fun. And, of course, getting to have the beard and be a little skinnier and all that stuff, it was a lot of fun.
How did Joe Napolitano direct you? Were you playing it as the bad guy? Because you were kind of a red herring in the episode.
Yes.
Even though it was a strange episode.
It was. And as I recall, you didn't want to give it away, but you wanted to suspect me. You weren't quite sure what was happening. It's been so long, I have to be honest, I can't remember any specifics about how he approached it.
When filming the episode, did you approach it like it was a dream sequence? Because some people interpret the episode as it all being a dream, and some people think it actually happened in the episode. What was your take on that?
I played it as it actually happened, I believe. I don't remember anything about a dream.
Okay. Well, Sam falls on the stairs and bumps his head, and then he wakes up and none of it had happened yet, kind of thing at the end.
Gotcha. But for us playing it, I don't know that we could have played it like we're in a dream.
Yeah.
Because, let us discover that later, because it has to seem like it was really happening.
Where was this episode shot?
I was trying to think about that, because I remember certain images. I remember there was a house that we used that I think I was once worked in on a different thing, and it was all in the Southern California area, nothing radical. I don't really remember where the house was. I want to say it was in the valley somewhere.
What was it like filming that episode? I know there was like a turntable involved where everybody had to take their turn getting on and spinning around. What was that like?
That was very bizarre. I don't know if you have kids or not, but it reminded me of a bunch of that. It's always at a playground. I don't know if there still is anymore. My kids are grown.
Yeah.
No grandchildren yet. But there was always that metal wheel that would turn around, with the metal bar.
Yeah.
And your kid would get it on and you think, oh, my God, please don't, get your head bashed in. But, it wasn't as bad as it might have seemed. But it was an odd thing. I do remember. I forgot that. That was very odd.
Anything else you can remember from, I'll say the name of it, The Boogie?
The DP is so important in those shows. I mean, because he's hired by the network and the studio to make sure the show has a certain look. And it was the same with Chips. When a show begins that first season, to get a show done in 7 or 8 days is really, really difficult, because everyone's getting used to working together, and in terms of the lighting and the move from place to place. The hours, as I said, that first show they worked, I don't know, it was almost 30 straight hours, I think, to get that thing finished.
Yeah, that's crazy. Seriously,
I came and they had been working. I don't remember how it was, but I showed up and they'd already been there, and boy, we were there forever. It was hard to believe. Because, usually they're so strict about that stuff because of the money.
Right.
At a certain point, it just becomes, and you see producers standing around, the line producer, whatever, standing around looking at watches and time, that, it becomes prohibitively expensive to exceed a certain amount of time. And then you have to be fed every so often. So, when they did that, it was some serious cash to get that episode done.
Do you get paid overtime for it?
Of course. As an actor, you long for the overtime gigs because it's nice money.
Can we talk about Chips for a little bit?
Of course.
Because I know probably a lot of fans of Quantum Leap are also fans of yours from Chips. What was that like being on such an iconic program that still people love to this day?
Yeah, thank God for MeTV and the fact it's on 5 days a week. It was fantastic. I feel so proud to have been a part of that show. It's interesting now because with everything that's happened and the way the world has grown, and we see things where the police, who would become a policeman today when you think about it? And at the time, not only were we selling the California lifestyle to people, we were also really presenting law enforcement in a positive light. Because in 6 years, there was only one gun ever pulled by one of the officers.
Oh, wow.
And that was my dear friend Bertie Greer as Barricks had pulled a gun. And they spent 3 hours on the set before they allowed the scene to be filmed, because all the powers that be and the network and everyone were like, the gun, no, not the gun, but because of what these guys had done, it just was so unrealistic to think that he would be able to get these guys out of the van without pulling the gun. But that was it. So we really were about solving problems with your heads and your hearts and your words. And I felt really very positive about that. I'm very grateful about that.
I loved that show when I was a kid. Watching it growing up, I had all the toys and everything.
Yeah, it's funny. My kids have never seen it. But,
really?
Maybe when they were young, but yeah, no. I have a 22-year-old. I said, "Oh, look, it's on now. You can see it." And she's like, I don't think I can get her to watch one episode. It's very funny.
Really? Huh.
Yeah.
You worked with Michael Dorn in Chips.
I did.
What was that like? How was your guys' relationship?
It was great. I gave him his name, his character name, Jed. He had no name. And one day I turned around and I said, "See you later, Jedediah." And Larry loved it. He went, "Oh, my God, that is great." And so then they named him Jed from then on, Jed Turner, because he was always just Turner. Never had a first name. And I also worked with him in a horror film.
Really?
Oh, Lord. I did a horror film about 5 years ago or 6 years ago up in, we actually shot it at the prison where they shot the Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, cool.
And he was in that. And he's a great guy. And of all of us, what a great career he had.
Mm.
I mean, he went on to, the whole thing with Worf and Star Trek. And, he just fantastic. Happy for him.
Awesome. I also wanted to ask you about, this is a little weird connection that another Quantum Leap guest star, John D'Aquino, has.
I know John.
With Charles Nelson Riley.
Yes.
Yeah. Were you all friends with that group?
Well, I got to know John through Charles. They had worked together, and I met Charles, who I loved. I loved Charles Nelson Riley. He was a dear friend. And he'd seen my one-man show. I wrote a one-man show that I was performing in L.A. It was quite successful in the late 80s. And so many people were moved by it. It was my first wife who died of breast cancer and what I had learned going through it. And it was called Time Flies When You're Alive. And I think it's still available through iTunes or HBO On Demand. I don't know. But you can get Time Flies When You're Alive. It's my one-man show talking about that stuff. And Charles had seen it. And I was being interviewed on a TV show, and he called the station and found me in the entry room. The guard said, "Hey, is there Paul Link here? There's a phone call for you." And it was Charles. And he said he wanted to have lunch with me and wanted to meet the man that does one-man theater better than he did. I had no idea about his background with Julie Harris and all that stuff, but we became friends. And I ultimately co-wrote and directed his one-man play called Save It for the Stage, which is available on on DVD, I should say. Not to date myself. It's called The Life of Riley. And if you ever have a chance to see that film, don't miss it, because the guys did what I never could do, because they were able to edit it. I was dealing with the live Riley. There was no editing of Charles in the flesh.
No editing.
He would do what he wanted to do. But anyway, through him, I met John D'Aquino. And
cool. Charles Nelson Riley always seemed like a cool guy.
He was a genius. He truly was a comic genius. I've been very blessed. I grew up, went to college, spent time with, raised children with, and my dear friend John Ritter, because we were pals for going back to USC. And, we got married around the same time. We had all of our kids together around the same time, and their kids went all the same schools together. And, he was one of my very, very best friends. So I'm fortunate to have had a lot of laughter in my life. And unfortunately, two of the funniest people one could ever have as friends are both gone. And truly the world's not as funny a place as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. That was very sad.
Yeah, it's life.
Yeah. Time flies when you're alive, right?
That's it. Believe me, that's very true.
You seem to play a lot of police officers, detectives. Is that because of the Chips affiliation, you think?
I think it's just the type I am, I think. Even the way I got Chips in a very unique way. Usually you go and audition, and then they have you come back, and then they have you come back. And then if you get that far, then they say, well, you go to the network. And then if you're approved, then maybe you get the job. They had already started production on Chips. They'd made, I think it was 8 episodes, and they couldn't find a funny cop. And the guy that was doing the job didn't want to do the show. He wanted to go live on a kibbutz in Israel, so he left. So I went to visit my dad, Richard O. Linke, who was a TV producer. You can look him up. He's still alive. He's going to be 98 next month.
Awesome.
He was Andy Griffith's partner for over almost 40 years.
I read that.
Yeah, through the Andy Griffith Show and through Matlock and all that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I went to visit my father. My father said, hey, there's a casting director looking for you, and Gary Schaefer. So I went, and he had seen a movie I had done called Moving Violation that was directed by Charles Dubin and with Stephen McCaddy and Kay Lenz. And no one saw that movie. That movie came and went in a week. But somehow this guy had seen it, and I had a really good part where I, chase the bad guy, and my car rolls over, and I stagger out of the car and do a take. And he thought, this guy would be good for Chips. And literally, my audition for Chips was I went in and sat at a long table with a lot of people and made him laugh and was hired. I mean, just like that. Next thing you know, I'm on the show.
Most of the show, right?
Yeah, many shows. There's 100 and whatever, many of them for 5.5 years.
Wow. Talking about your dad, being his son, was it always pretty much assumed you were going to go into the business, or did that have any influence on you?
Not at all. He had nothing to do with any of that stuff. I grew up around it, and the truth is, when I was 13, 14, I'd go to the lot and play catch with Ron Howard because my dad said, come on, hang out with this young man. He's a little boy. He's on the set. So I'd go play catch with him. I loved the Andy Griffith set. It was just a fantastic environment. And later in life, I was cast in a Happy Days, and I'm sitting in the makeup chair next to Ron, and he reminded me that I had taken him to his first Dodger game. When I was 17, I took Ron Howard to it, and he remembered everything about the game. He remembered who won, who was the winning pitcher, who had the winning hit. But my point is that my dad, although he exposed me to all that stuff, really, had never any intention of getting involved in show business whatsoever. I thought I'd be a lawyer, and then the 60s came, and then I was a hippie. And, went off to college and majored in having fun. And then somewhere along the line, I realized that the fun had better stop and that I better figure out what I was going to do. And a tall redheaded woman said to me, her name was Monday Dooley. And Monday turned to me one day when I was really depressed and thinking about dropping out of school. And she said, well, have you ever thought about taking an acting class? And I did. And something in it clicked. So I pursued it, and then I realized it's really what I wanted to do. And my father, he was not keen on the idea at all. In fact, his only comment to me was, well, if you're going to be an actor, you better go get a job because you're going to need it. And he was right. So I went and I literally, this is true, I drove from his office that day, about a mile away to this place where this guy had this weird kind of bar restaurant that only served dinner, and he hired me to cook. I'd never cooked. So I was a cook, and so that I could afford the rent, I moved into a commune down by my old university, USC, and the rent was $35 a month, $40 if you wanted food. So I actually lived in the commune until I saw that I was going to be able to get work and be able to support myself. And fortunately, it happened rather quickly. So within 6 months, I was living in Laurel Canyon and, was getting jobs. It was fantastic.
That's awesome. Did having your father help you or hurt you, or was that a non-issue when you were auditioning?
It had no impact. I remember right before I got Chips, Andy was making a pilot for something called Salvage. I think if you look it up, it might have gotten on the air, it might have aired half a dozen times or something. It didn't work. I remember I put in a good word for Nick Nolte in that because they were looking at him for something, and I remember saying how great he was. But anyway, I went in and read for it. And my father left the room. He excused himself. And that was as close as we ever got to being in the business together, was that moment. I mean, truthfully, when Matlock was happening, he tried to get me a job on that.
Right.
But truthfully, by then, his relationship with Andy had turned, and Andy didn't really want to give me a job on the show. So, I went in all those times. I never got it.
Wow. Which
was really painful for me because I grew up thinking that he was one of the greatest people of all time, and was quite disappointed because I never understood it. It had nothing to do with me. He was just, he and my dad were whatever they were into. I think there's a book coming out about Andy and Don.
Really?
In fact, there is one coming out. My dad showed me the copy of it, or a picture of it. Coming out this fall. And it should be kind of interesting for people because he was a very interesting character, Mr. Griffith.
That does sound interesting. I'll check that out.
Yeah, check that out.
And of course, you've been in major motion pictures like K-PAX and Parenthood. Could you tell me a little bit about those things?
Well, I can tell you that K-PAX I took even though there were no lines. You go, really? I'm going to do a part with no lines? And we're going to give you lines. We're going to give you lines. They're never going to give you lines. But I didn't care because Jeff Bridges is a friend, and he had gone out of his way to try to get me parts in his films. I mean, seriously. And finally, even though this didn't really have anything to do with him, I was going to be in a Jeff Bridges film with Kevin Spacey. And I was going to get to go to New York because that was part of the gig. And it was work. And I get to hang around. And so I said, fantastic. And I got to go see my late wife's father. And it was a really fun gig. And it's a good movie. I like the movie. Kevin Spacey, I cannot say enough about him. I mean, truly an amazing man. I had gone to the Ovation Awards, which is a theater award here in L.A., on behalf of Charles, on behalf of our play, because Charles was up for Best One-Man Show. And he asked me to go and accept for him if he won. And, of course, I was sitting there terrified, hoping, in a sense, he didn't win. They would want me, they wanted him. But anyway, and the first award of the evening was Best Supporting Actor in a Play. And so Kevin was the surprise guest, came out, and everyone goes, oh, my God, it's Kevin Spacey. And he's giving the Best Supporting Actor out. So, this person, he names this person, he names this person. And the last person, the fifth actor, was an African actor with a name that was so complex, and he said it flawlessly. And I remember thinking, God, that is amazing. He is so great. So then I had this job, and the next thing I know, within a few days, I'm with him in a room at a rehearsal. And there was a break, and I said, excuse me, I have to tell you, I was so impressed. It was so kind of you to give him your time to come to the Ovation Awards. And how did you get that guy's name out? And he said, well, I asked him for a list of the names, and immediately upon seeing that name, I got people involved, and I was given the right pronunciation.
Wow.
Because it was important to me that it was his moment. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about me screwing up his name and getting a laugh or something. It was to honor him for his work. And I just thought, bow down to you, man. You are fantastic. And he is. And being around him on that set and getting to watch him work was really fantastic. Now, Parenthood, on the other hand, is one of the things, if you said to me, okay, what do it's light, as Yogi would said, it gets laid early out here. Mm-hmm. What do you look back on? What are you most proud of? My one-man show, Time Flies When You're Alive, is my gift to the universe when I leave. I'm so proud of that. It's helped so many people. HBO made it available to hospices all over the United States.
Oh, wow.
It's helped people. I've helped people. That makes me feel, that's what we're all here to do, is to help each other anyway. But besides that, and Chips, Parenthood would be it, because I just love that movie. And I love my part in the movie, and I thought I did a really good job of that part, and it was fantastic. And that was interesting because the ending, I was doing my one-man show in San Francisco at the time, and so I said, what am I going to do? And they said, we'll fly you in on your off days. We'll schedule you on your off days. So I fly back and forth, got all these frequent flyer miles, enough to give my sister and her husband a trip to Hawaii to thank them for all the help they'd been to me when my wife was dying and helping me with the 3 kids and everything. So I gave them a round-trip thing to Hawaii.
Awesome.
Then all of a sudden I get a call from the Parenthood people that I have to come back, that we're going to redo the whole ending. So I don't know if you know the movie well, but the ending is at the hospital, and everyone's in the waiting room, and somebody's having a baby, but you don't know who it is, and you keep thinking it's maybe Mary Steenburgen or maybe it's this person, and one by one you see them all appear in the waiting room, and you realize, well, who is it? And then I come out, the red herring, so to speak, and I pull the thing down, and it's a girl and all that. Anyway, that was an added-on thing.
That's cool.
They were kind of finished winding on the film. They went, we don't have the right ending, and that became the ending.
Does that happen a lot in show business?
I'm sure it does. A lot of times I think things happen where they make a movie. I don't know that I've been part of this, but I've heard of it where they make it, show it to a test audience, and then go out and try to fix what's wrong. Mm. I know that happens, but there are no rules. You probably know. The business is the business. It's a very strange animal, and anything's possible.
Yeah, that's very true. Going back to Quantum Leap, what was it like working with Valerie Mahaffey?
First of all, she's a tremendous actress and a theater actress and just a wonderful gal. And we had a wonderful time together. She's such a professional, and boy, does she bring it. She's really good. She's really good.
She seems to play that kind of just strangeness when she plays a character.
Yes.
Is she like that in real life, or is that just something she plays?
No, she's so down to earth.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I can remember where she's from, but she's a very down to earth gal.
Very cool. Do you remember the matchstick you had to chew on the whole episode of The Boogeyman?
Yes, that was my idea.
Oh, your idea.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you that. And they worked it into the storyline a little bit.
Yeah, I don't remember how that happened. I had a line to say about matches, something on matches. I'm trying to remember the line. You know, these lines are emerging from so far, they've been buried so long.
25 years, right?
Mess with matches. If you mess with matches, I know something happens. You know, the classic actor with the toothpick is always a little bit sort of cliche, but once in a while it seems right, so you got to do it.
I enjoyed that part of the episode just because it was a little bit of, you wondered why, you know, and it made the character just a little bit more mysterious, I think.
Yeah. And once again, there I'm in uniform, you know, just like the same kind of brown uniform I wore in Motel Hell. Did you ever see Motel Hell?
Not yet.
Check it out.
Okay.
I'm the hero in that movie. Rory Calhoun is brilliant in that movie. I mean, hysterical. You can't believe how funny he is. And I know that sounds weird, but the movie was meant to be a comedy. I think the studio got nervous about it and backed away from the comedy a little bit and tried to promote the gore a little bit more. But there's some funny lines in that movie.
I was going to ask if there's something that you think people should see of your work that they might have not seen.
You know, Ron Howard's first film he ever directed was called, oh my God, Grand Theft Auto.
Yes.
Not the video game.
A little bit different.
I loved my work in that movie. The style of the movie was broad. I like to do broad comedy, and I got a chance to really do it in that. That was a fantastic experience. Plus, Nancy Morgan, who was the star with Ron and I, she was the woman I thought loved me, but really loved Ron, and I chased through 2 states to try to win her back. She ultimately married John Ritter.
Oh, wow.
So 2 friends came together.
That's awesome when that happens. And you got to work with John Ritter a couple times.
I did. You know, we got to do some theater together, which was quite satisfying, and some comedy together. To this day, one of the funniest things I've ever been around was A Day in the Life of Edwin Marcus, which is a sketch show that he wrote with Jack Bender and who went on to great heights as a director and showrunner. Jack Bender, if you look him up, he's done, you know, Lost and The Last Ship, and I mean, he does all these things. And I've worked for him in Movies of the Week, but they did this thing called A Day in the Life of Edwin Marcus, which was a comedy, and I've never been in a room where for 2 hours people laughed that hard and couldn't breathe, you know, on akin with the Kentucky Fried Theater, which also to me was just beyond, just so hilarious.
Awesome. Have you ever bumped into somebody that recognized you from Quantum Leap or had an experience later on in life that came from working on Quantum Leap, or a funny story?
Well, I certainly have been recognized by people, but I think people generally mostly recognize me from Chips, you know, and the general vibe is, I know you. What high school did you go to? It's kind of weird, but it's hard not to appreciate it when someone remembers your work for whatever it was that they saw you do.
Yeah, it's strange. No matter what performance, there's always someone out there that's their favorite thing you've ever done. So
yeah, and I still get fan mail. I mean, I still get fan mail from Chips.
Wow.
You know, not a lot, but I have gotten letters from Quantum Leap fans, you know, who remember me from the show. And because Quantum Leap, as you know, I mean, you got a podcast, Quantum Leap. There are Quantum Leap fans out there, big time.
Oh, so many, yes, yeah. I'm one of them.
Yeah. Have you met Scott?
I did an interview with him. I haven't met him yet.
Nicest guy.
Oh, great guy. And everybody speaks so highly of him.
He is just, I love the guy. He's a fantastic person. Because he's who he is. It's not, you know, he just is. It doesn't change his success or whatever. It doesn't, you know, it's who he is. He's the real person.
So both times on Quantum Leap a really positive experience for you?
Fantastic. Really.
Awesome.
Nothing but the most positive things.
I think you did really good just because I've seen both of your episodes many times and I never thought you were the same actor that did both parts.
Well, that's quite an honor. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. That really means a lot to me.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of Quantum Leap and all the entertainment you've given all of us over the years, and I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you. And just out of curiosity, where am I speaking? What part of the country are you in?
I'm in Southwest Florida. It's called Cape Coral, Florida.
Okay.
But the podcast is going all over the world.
Oh, great. You know, one last thing, you know, the Charles Show, Save It for the Stage, The Life of Riley, it began in Florida.
Really?
At the Caldwell Theater in Boca Raton in 1999.
Oh, nice area.
So I had the good fortune to be down in Florida several times working with him down there.
Very cool. It's very pretty down here. It's just very hot.
Yeah. Well, good luck in hurricane season, and
thank you.
I thank you for your interest and appreciate the time.